Welcome to Travel Secrets with me, Tanya Rose, the podcast sharing wisdom for fellow travellers. Each week, I ask my guests to reveal their 6 travel secrets and the trips and holidays that uncover them. My guest today is the wonderful Rupert Everett.
Good morning.
Good morning. The colourful, prolific actor, writer and director. He first came to the public's attention in the amazing film Another Country, followed by other hugely successful films like My Best Friend's Wedding, An Ideal Husband, and Stardust, which is also one of my favourite films, and starred our friend Mark Strong.
That's right.
The other film which I love that you did, which is hilarious and most people will probably not have seen, is Dunstan Checks In. Just loved it. My son and I, every weekend, we go, please, Mum, let me watch Dunstan Checks In.
Children loved Dunstan Checks In. It was one of my favourite movies to do, actually, because my co-star was an orangutan.
It was.
And this orangutan was unbelievable. And it was such fun working with him, actually.
Lord Rutledge you were, weren't
That's
you?
right.
Oh, the very naughty Lord Rutledge. Your memoirs have been sold far and wide, and I have been lucky enough to see you a few times on stage in A Judas Kiss, which you were magnificent in.
Thank you very much.
And then The Happy Prince, which you wrote, directed, and obviously starred in, was just one of the most amazing, amazing films.
Oh, thank you very much.
So
indeed.
You've been around the world. You even did a travel documentary, I think, on Lord Byron's life and Richard Burton, but not Richard Burton, the actor.
Richard Burton, the explorer.
So I'd love to hear a little bit about that. But welcome, lovely Rupert. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining me. And before we get into our travel secrets, perhaps you could just tell us a bit about yourself and how travel has shaped your life, if it has in any way.
Well, funnily enough, I've never really gone on holiday. I've always travelled to work. And so I've really seen the world only through a kind of working perspective mostly. And I've enjoyed that. I'm not very good sitting around and doing nothing. But on the other hand, I really have traveled a lot, and I got to know quite a few places in the world very, very well. And I love that about my life. I think that probably the favorite thing, if I was looking back on kind of not achievements, but what I've done, is just being very familiar with a lot of countries and a lot of different places and having friends dotted around the world. I think that gives you a wonderful feeling, and it's very lucky to know the world a bit.
Do you go on holidays more now?
I only have one holiday destination. I go to Jamaica a lot because I was great friends with a lady called Anita Pallenberg, and she lived in the hills above a town called Ocho Rios in Jamaica, and I went to stay a lot in a wonderful, my favorite hotel in the world, which is called Jamaica Inn.
Oh, it's divine, isn't it?
And Jamaica Inn for me is one of the best places I've ever been. There's no televisions. Every room has this amazing kind of outdoor sitting room. The garden is absolutely beautiful with kind of, I suppose, colonialish borders of marigolds and lovely flowers. There's a croquet lawn, and it's in its own cove. And the sea is, it's the most wonderful sea. And a great cast of characters working there, and 2 very strange brothers, one of whom has just died actually, who own it. And their father bought it when he was flying over after the war, and spotted it, and it was for sale. And it was kind of, it's an exciting place because it's on the way to Ian Fleming's house and also on the way to Noël Coward's house. So in my world, that's very exciting, and I've had a lot of my working relationship with Noël Coward, and so discovering his house, which is now owned by Chris Blackwell, and is called Firefly, which is now a kind of living mausoleum. You can open the cupboards in the bedroom, and his eye drops are still there, or at least they were a few years.
That's
and his Q-tips are still in the bathroom cupboard, and that is a place that is very, very strange, and his tomb is there too. And so Jamaica for me has been a great place to go on holiday. And I used to go and visit Anita, my friend, and that hotel is a very special place.
Do you still go back to Jamaica?
Yeah, I go there once a year if I can.
I've been to Goldeneye, which is the other place that Chris Blackwell owns, and I think it was Ian Fleming's house, wasn't it?
Yes, and then Chris built that kind of pretend beach.
Yeah.
But Goldeneye to me doesn't have the charm. GoldenEye, in fact, in a way, to me, is everything I don't like about the travel world now. It's so expensive. It's full of, I don't know, it's not, it's just
not authentic anymore.
It doesn't feel, considering how authentic Chris is, it doesn't feel that authentic.
Yeah,
And
and
it's
hasn't he
also
done, like,
gripped in a
stilts?
gale. It's always windy there.
Really? Oh my goodness. Well, I would love to go back and go to Firefly and see Noel Coward's eye drops. That would be hugely
Oh,
exciting.
it's amazing. And also such a humble house because, the famous, up until, I suppose, the 90s, lived much humbler lives. If you look at books, about Hollywood stars in the 80s and the 70s, their houses are little kind of shacks often in Malibu or in the Pacific Palisades, and they're filled with kind of bric-a-brac. Now, the lowliest studio executive lives like Tutankhamun.
No, you're absolutely right. That's so true. Let's go into your travel secrets. What's the number one destination that you think everyone should go to once in their lifetime?
Oh, Italy, I think, without a doubt. And I think, to go to Rome is absolutely extraordinary. I always stay in the Hotel Locarno in
Oh,
Rome,
do you? Interesting.
which is a very beautiful hotel. And I have a room there which has this amazing damask fabric wallpaper. And I like going to Venice. I spend a lot of time in Venice. And I think being on a train in Italy is amazing. They have these trains called the Freccia Rossa.
Oh.
And they're those high-speed trains
Yeah.
like they have,
In
which
Paris
we don't
and
have
France
here.
and things, yeah.
And you can go up from Naples all the way to Torino in about 6 hours now. And it's an amazing journey. And it's the most beautiful country. And I think the Italians are really fun with the tourists. I mean, France is wonderful too, but the French don't really like foreigners very much. So you don't get quite such a warm welcome, I think, in France.
I love the Italians, I must say. I must send you to a new hotel that opened last year on Lake Como. It's called Passalacqua. It's got 13 bedrooms and it was voted last year the best hotel in the world.
Oh, really?
It is the most beautiful hotel you have ever seen. Every room is exquisite. It's so authentic. It's very traditional, but with a modern twist. But it is absolutely amazing. And the food is delicious. The owner is heaven. And I know you'd love it because it's very peaceful. And Lake Como is Lake Como. Everyone's looking for George Clooney on the water and everything. But actually, this hotel is very private, very quiet, and you would absolutely love it. So
I
put
love
that on
Lake
your list.
Como, and I spent a lot of time on Como because Gianni Versace and Donatella Versace had a wonderful house on Como, quite near to where George Clooney is, and it's an amazing place. And also, Milan is an incredible place to be. And then the drive from Milan up into the mountains, because Switzerland is my other really favorite place. And the high valleys in Engadin are really my other favorite holiday destination. And
do you ski?
I don't ski, I walk.
Oh, do you? So you go in the summer?
I go in the summers, and I've been going to St. Moritz in the summers for, I don't know, about 30 years. I always like to go from Milan because driving up from Milan into the mountains is the most extraordinary thing, because you go up and up and up and you think you've got to the top, and you get to the top of this hill, and then you suddenly realize you're at the bottom of another huge high range, and it's the most exciting travel journey. I think that's one of the must-do things, is to travel into Switzerland from Italy.
I absolutely love Switzerland. I actually grew up in Switzerland, in Gstaad, which I was very, very privileged and very lucky. And we used to spend our Christmases, Easters, but my favorite time in the summer is the summer.
It's
and to go on
wonderful.
walking holidays, riding holidays, staying in little tiny huts, getting a guitar out, singing. And it is so wonderful. I think Switzerland, and also the trains in Switzerland work. So
wonderful.
You get on, that it's going to be on time, on the right platform. It's just fantastic.
And Gstaad is beautiful too, although the terrain is completely different because it's so much lower, but it's very lush and beautiful. And then it has Saanen next door, where my spiritual hero, who is a man called Krishnamurti, used to. Well, there was a religion called Theosophy. Well, there still is actually, and it was a huge religion at the end of the 19th century and the beginning of the 20th century, started by Madame Blavatsky and this extraordinary English woman called Annie Besant. And they, along with this kind of paedophile, self-proclaimed bishop, found the new Messiah, which was a kind of 8-year-old boy on the beach, walking on the beach in this place called Adyar, which is near to Madras. And they brought him up, they sent him to England, and they kind of dressed him in Savile Row suits. And they prepared the Theosophists, who were a gigantic group, a huge religion with tons of money. And they had huge theosophical centers in New York, in London, everywhere. And in Madras, they had this big center, and they prepared this boy to become the Messiah. And he was educated in England. He looked very, very chic. And this was in the 1920s. When he was revealed to all the Theosophists, he disbanded the religion and said, there are no leaders, there are no messiahs, you've all got to go your own way. And then he went on to be this almost really a messiah himself. And his last the place that he used to go and talk was in Sarnen. And so that's, for me, a very special place too.
Sarnen is such a beautiful little village. And Yehudi Menuhin lived there as
Yes.
well and used to play in that church.
Mm-hmm.
Really beautiful.
And also in show business, it was the home of Blake Edwards and Julie Andrews, Valentino, Roger Moore. And so it has a very old school kind of thing about it with all of them, I think.
And that's when I lived there, when they were all living there, which was wonderful. So we would go to the Palace Hotel on New Year's Eve or something. They would all be there. And then I would see Roger Moore on the ski slopes, having just seen him in James Bond, thinking, that's not quite the same thing. But he had a wonderful restaurant called the Chlösterli. I don't know if you ever went there.
Yeah.
That was fantastic as well.
And then what was it up the hill? The Eagle Club.
Eagle Club. Yeah, absolutely.
Gstaad is an amazing place.
I went to the Eagle Club for the very first time, having lived in Gstaad all my life, never been in, with Michael Winner, who actually I loved. Michael was an amazing, he was great. If you liked him or he liked you, you were fine. And he went up on the ski lift. This is in the winter. And he was so frightened that he didn't get off at the top.
Oh, so
and he went all the
down.
way round again. And so I skied underneath and I said, are you all right, Michael? And he went, Jews don't travel like this. I have never laughed so much in my life. It was hysterical. So I had to sit on the thing with him and then say, right, walk. Anyway, let's go on to travel secret number 2. What's the most unexpected travel that you've ever done or been to or place?
I mean, the most difficult one, I once got a job. I was at the bottom of a list of actors to go and work in Russia for an old director called Sergei Bondarchuk. He'd long dreamt of making this film of a great book called Tiki Don, The Quiet Flows the Don. And at the top of the list of actors was Richard Gere. And at the bottom of the list of actors was me. But because it was a Russian film, there was a starting point, but no finishing point. And so they went through the whole list of actors and finally got to me. And I'm
sure you did a marvelous job.
Well, I was completely miscast. I mean, my role was of this incredibly macho Cossack. And this Cossack, in fact, is also very famous in Russia. From halfway down Russia to the bottom, every car has his picture in it, because this Cossack was the kind of characters in literature that Stalin allowed, because he wasn't really a red. He was more of the Cossacks were more, well, they went between the whites and the reds during the revolution and after. But this Cossack was a sacred, like Robin Hood, but more important than Robin Hood, really. He was a proper important character to the Russians. So when I got the part in the end, and I arrived in Moscow to stay in a hotel where, as it happened, all the people who were about to become oligarchs were kind of selling and buying things that they could get out. At that point, this was just the year before communism fell. Wow. So they were going in and out and bringing imports in, and they all dealt from the foyer of this hotel I was staying in. And anyway, when the poor director discovered that I was gay, playing this great Cossack role, and then communism fell, literally the second week we were there, it was a very, very curious time. And
did you have a difficult time?
No, I had a wonderful time. I kind of became my character, because we filmed for 2 years. It took 2 years to make the film. And I lived there between Moscow and this little village called Vyoshenskaya, which is near Rostov, for 2 years. And I eventually lived in an apartment, and in the flat next door to me, inside one of those, the front doors are all covered in kind of quilted leather in Moscow, very peculiar. Anyway, my neighbor burnt to death in his flat. Ooh. On the night. Everything's very dramatic in Russia.
Yes, very dramatic.
He burnt to death in his flat the first night I was there. And so everyone was pulling everything out, and then his body came out, and they dumped the mattress and this kind of lampstand with a burnt lampshade outside the flat. It stayed there for the whole 2 years. So autumn came and the leaves fell on it. Then the snow came and you could just see the outline of the lamp. Then spring came and then
the snowdrops came.
Snowdrops grew up through the mattress, and this burnt mattress was still there. I think being there for 2 years in Russia was really the most extraordinary and life-changing experience I had.
What's it called, the film?
It's called Quiet Flows the Don.
Quiet
It's actually a series. It's 8 hours.
Is it on Netflix now?
No, it's not on anything, because he then died straight after the film was made, and it's only ever been released in Russia.
Oh, so I can't see that.
You can. There's a DVDs of it somewhere, but
and I have a DVD player. I'm probably one of the only people in this country that still has a DVD player, on which I watch Dunstan Checks In.
Well, that's another from the sublime to the ridiculous.
Exactly.
Quiet Flows the Don to Dunstan Checks In.
To Dunstan Checks In. Let's go on to the next travel secret. What is the most overrated travel place you've been to or experience you've ever had?
I think everything's become a little bit overrated in the luxury travel world. A corner was turned, I think, sometime in the 90s when the ideas that the luxury hotels had which was to kind of go into an insane type of overdrive, for me became awkward and unspontaneous. And it happened in all the hotels. One of my favorite hotels had been the Hotel Meurice in Paris.
Oh, yeah.
And then they were just so determined to make it, more spanking and more
Glitzy.
Brilliant. They put it in the hands of Philippe Starck, and he literally massacred it. And then all these places, they just became too grand for me in a way. And I think it's a great shame, because if you went to, for example, the Palace Hotel in St. Moritz in the days when the Badrut family still owned it, it had a kind of family type atmosphere, even though it was very grand and quite expensive. And then it got bought up by a group, and they started pumping more money into it, and the bathrooms became more sharp-edged and marbleized. Not bad, but the colors were kind of drained out of it slightly, and I felt that's happened in a lot of places. I think very few places have survived their new kind of Russian money-oriented refurbishments.
I used to look after the Hotel du Cap Eden Rock for many, many years.
Well, that's one.
The Urca collection. And when my husband and I got together 30 years ago, I said we could go and stay there. He said, no, I'm taking you to my hotel, and I hope you'll understand why. And I said, but it's lovely. And he said, no, you're coming with me. So from that day onwards, we stay at the Colombe d'Or in August.
Yeah, it's lovely.
And he's stayed there since 1969, and it's still incredibly authentic. Yeah. And the same people go back. The cupboards don't close, the air conditioning rattles, but it is so authentic. Same menu, beautiful paintings. It's not at all glitzy.
No, it's lovely.
It's really, really charming. Let's talk about food and drink. Food and drink is obviously so important to all our lives, all around the world. Do you have a favorite place you go to eat, or the best meal you've ever had, or cocktails? What's your thoughts on food and drink and travel?
It's another thing that I feel I haven't kind of moved with the times on. First of all, when plates started getting bigger and helpings started getting smaller, I thought this is some kind of rip-off. And also the plates that all kind of started looking like potties that I sat on as a baby. And I feel very sorry for waiters having to carry these plates, because I know lots of career waiters get really difficult wrists for carrying, 4 plates. But if you have to carry kind of 10 flying saucers on your hand, I think it's quite unfair. And then I don't like the new aesthetic of kind of blobs and squiggles and kind of dirty protests of, I don't know what it all is, balsamic vinegar sprayed on things. I like wholesome food. Switzerland is a great place for food, because all vegetables, all salad, all meat, they do it very simply, and it's always amazing quality.
You get your Wiener Schnitzel, and delicious.
It's delicious. Yeah. I think food has lost, like the whole planet, it's just lost the plot slightly in expensive places. Here in London, I like. I always go to the same places near to my house. I like canteens.
Oh yeah.
And I have 3. One is a restaurant called Ciao Bella, an Italian restaurant in Lamb's Conduit Street. And another is called Noble Rot, also in Lamb's Conduit Street. Yeah. And I kind of basically
rotate
rotate
between
between those
those.
ones. My expensive restaurant I like here is called Ikeda, a Japanese restaurant in Brook Street, just opposite the Claridge's Hotel. And otherwise, I think French food has really gone downhill. Italian food also has gone down. Everything in Venice, for example, which is a place I love. There's very few restaurants that are any good. They just churn it all out, and quite often it's fairly disgusting.
Yeah, I'm a great simple food. I like going somewhere where it's fresh fish and
Mm.
that's it,
Yeah.
or roast chicken, just very simple. The whole problem with the Michelin star culture, I think, is the food's probably delicious, but they interrupt you all the time and they tell you what's coming, and you're actually there to see your friends,
I
not to have
hate the
somebody.
conversations, and this is where also everyone's spatial awareness is completely fucked up nowadays. First of all, in the street, everyone bumps into everyone because they can't do that old-fashioned ballet. But in restaurants, you're just telling somebody, you're about to die, and then this waiter comes up and explains to you what's in the special.
Exactly.
I don't really want to know what's in it. I find that quite irritating.
Very irritating. When you did the documentary on Lord Byron and then on Richard Burton, did you travel to the places that they travelled?
With Byron, we went to Switzerland. We went to Geneva, and went to Lake Geneva, where he first settled after he had to leave England. Then we went to Greece, to Missolonghi, where he died, and then we went to his house, Newstead Abbey, in Derbyshire, and Venice we went to. And so we did, we traveled around quite a lot.
And what about Richard Burton's explorer adventures? Did you do any of those
Yes,
explorations?
with Richard Burton, we went to India. We went to Goa because he went to Goa a lot. We were going to go up to Pakistan, but we didn't. And we went to Mortlake, where he's buried with his wife in this amazing marble campaign tent.
We have to talk a bit about Oscar Wilde because he's so much part of your life. And I've seen you 3 times in The Judas Kiss and then obviously The Happy Prince. So can we talk a bit about Oscar's travels and then how that impacted you as well?
Well, I think for me, Paris, we talked about places that I'd send everyone.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, Paris was really also a great turning point in my life. I went there on an exchange trip when I was 17. And then I went to live there about 8 years later, and I stayed there for about 14 years, living in France. And at the very beginning, Paris in the 1970s was really magical. It was still, collapsed from the war, really. And they had a very peculiar relationship with the war as well. They were still the chief of police in Paris when I first went was a Nazi, Bousquet. There was so many. It was such an unfinished drama, and you could somehow feel that in the air. And Chirac was knocking it all down, and Oscar Wilde for me was just the most romantic idea. And the hotel that he went to, which is L'Hotel, which is actually a rather undermining visit. I mean, the trouble with going to try and follow in people's footsteps is it can often be a bit demoralizing because the places have changed so much, and L'Hotel is a quite claustrophobic place to me, and Oscar's room is a little bit depressing. But Oscar in Paris has been one of the things that's always inspired me. I feel he's a kind of, I don't know, Christ figure in a way that, his crucifixion was quite a long one, and his 3 years in Paris was so sad and kind of epic and romantic and fascinating. And so he's always been a great inspiration to me, one of my favorite characters.
And with The Happy Prince, I mean, you wrote it, directed it, and starred in it, and
I did.
It was magnificent. I mean, how did it play out? Because obviously you had it all in your head and you wrote it and then you directed it and then you acted in it. Was it, exactly what you thought it was going to be at the end?
Nothing is how you think it's going to be. And the first thing that happened in the deal of getting money for the film, the money we got for it initially came out of Munich, out of a film fund in Munich. So we had to shoot half the film in or around Munich. And so that really was the thing that gave it its biggest problem, because there's no architecture
That looks like it.
in that area in Bavaria that is remotely like French architecture. And this is what always happens in films. And depending on how acute your aesthetical, discipline is how you sink or swim. Because quite often you can tell the film's, just not got a center. But I found these three castles just near to Bayreuth, Wagner country, and they were kind of 15th century castles that I managed to convert into a lot of the sets for the film. And then we shot in Belgium, because that was the other part of our deal. Again, another place where there's not really that much architecture that really rooms that look like France. And then we did shoot also in Dieppe, where he went to when he first came over from England. And then we also shot in Naples, where he went. So we did a lot of traveling, and Naples also was a great eye-opener for me. And in fact, when I was writing the film, I went to live for a time in this village above Naples called Posillipo, which was the village he went to. And I discovered Naples, which is, again, another of the most amazing places in the world. It just really is extraordinary. It's like Naples and Rio de Janeiro really are two cities within huge countries that are completely of their own.
Yeah,
I mean, they have their own constitution, their own unwritten laws, and their language is incomprehensible to everyone else's almost. And they both have this spirit of which doesn't exist in many places anymore.
Yeah, and also Naples is so different from Positano or Capri or any of the other
Completely.
places around there.
Yeah,
It really
completely.
is a totally different thing.
Yeah.
I mean, it's very much like that song, isn't it? I remember the back streets of Naples.
Yeah. Oh, yes, I love that song.
I can't sing. I don't even know why I tried and attempted to sing. So, travel secret number 5. What is your best insider travel secret or travel tip?
Trains, I'd say. I used to be a junkie. So, first of all, these are probably very good ones. I used to love taking tramadols and getting on trains and just kind of being in a kind of
State.
Coco Chanel, Mizius cert kind of state of, and look out the window. Now, I'm addicted, ever since working in Toronto 2 years ago, to marijuana oil. And so I love having a little bit of marijuana oil under the tongue and getting on a train. Trains, for me, I think if I was to tell everyone how to travel, it's more expensive on the whole, but traveling by train is just heavenly. I think, for example, you're getting on the Eurostar is one of the most amazing trains. I love it. Going from Paris to Milan on the 6:57 train in the morning is amazing. It goes all the way through Alsace in the winter. It gets snowier and snowier and snowier. Going on the train from Naples to Venice, Rome to Venice, or to Florence, the Frecciarosas are incredible. Milan station is wonderful.
Have you ever done the Orient Express?
No, I haven't, because that's a bit too
glitzy
for me. I love the Frecciarossa has a class in it which is called Business Executivo, and there's a whole carriage, but only with 5 seats. And there's a kind of boardroom where you're allowed to have meetings. I don't know what meetings anyone would have, but it's very, very grand train. But that's as grand as I'd like to get. Otherwise, I just think I do like having a first class seat, and I like facing the direction I'm traveling in. I hate looking at everything disappearing.
So your travel tip is to travel by train, face the way you're going, and if you can, get some
gummies. And restaurants. I couldn't live. I spent most of my life, by the way, alone. And I suddenly realized the other day, I would have been, if I hadn't had the money to go to a restaurant for 3 meals a day all my life, which I have more or less, I would have been a very lonely person. But I think restaurants for me are the last. I wouldn't mind living in a bedsit. In fact, I'd like to live in a bedsit, provided I could go to
for breakfast,
a restaurant.
lunch and dinner.
Yeah, that's what I'd like. And it doesn't need to be the best restaurant in the world. It needs to have charm, authenticity, and waiters who are charming.
And characterful people staying and going to that restaurant.
And characterful people going. But I think living your life at a restaurant table, particularly one where you go often, where everyone knows you and you know them and they know your moods, it's one of the most wonderful services to be able to have. And the table is a kind of no man's land, and the maitre d' knows how much you want to talk every day or how little, and you know all the gossip of everything that's going on, and you can observe and see which waiters are fighting with which other ones. I mean, especially in Italy, when you're in Italy where it's all career waiters still, and you see how brilliantly they run their ships. If you go to the same restaurant every day, for example, there's one. I was in Venice making a film this summer, and I went to it's impossible to get reservations in Venice, so you have to pick on one and just
Go every
blitz
day.
them, and then finally they give you a table for every meal. And I went to this one called Madonna, and the waiters in it—they're just amazing, and it gets so full, and they're just amazing workers. And when you're on your own, tipsy, it's such fun. Getting to know how they all work and watching them and having them funneling the people in and out and the fish coming in and everything like that, which I love.
That takes us nicely onto the last travel secret. What's the most poignant travel experience that you've ever had that's still memorable to you now?
It's a difficult question, that, because everything is more poignant when you're young and when it's new. And, once you become an old slapper on the scene, you're not as easily moved by things and touched. Except in that sense, I was lucky. Working is always great, because normally when you go and do a job in a place, you're kind of forced into that place. I went to Colombia to make a film of a Gabriel Garcia Marquez novel once, and going there was just such a beautiful experience. And I rented this house in Cartagena, which is an amazing town in the old city. And this house was, I really felt I'd arrived at this point, because it was so grand, this house, but kind of falling down. And it had a kind of mad old bearded lady cook and her husband and their son. And there was a long 2 courtyards with parrots and monkeys. And
amazing.
It was just amazing. But it was run down slightly.
But that's wonderful.
It was wonderful. And Garbo had stayed there a lot in the 60s, and her name was always in the address book. And it was owned by this weird American guy called Patrick O'Neill. He owned restaurants in New York called O'Neill's. That was amazing. But I suppose going to Paris, really, when I was 16, I just couldn't believe getting out of England. And everywhere then was so much its own place. So when you went over the channel, it really felt, your journey was such an amazing thing too. You took the 10 o'clock train from Waterloo, and that connected to the boat, and then the boat connected to another train, and then the train in the morning, it took a different route to how the Eurostar goes. It kind of circled round the hill that the Sacré-Cœur is on, and you sat there blary-eyed, sitting up all night, and you saw Paris in the dawn. And I think that, for me, in the 1970s, was just remarkable.
Did you live in Paris from that time onwards?
No, but after that I kept coming back, and then I moved there, I think in 1986.
And you speak fluent French, and you feel very French when you're there.
I do. I pretty much speak fluent French, yes, and I think that was my most head turning time. But then, of course, then you learn, then you stay there too long, and then you learn to hate it like a local always does.
So the last thing I asked you to do was bring a photograph.
This is a photo of me and Enrique, my other half, when I took him to Engadin the first time, which is the high mountains in Switzerland, and we went on this amazing walk that I always do once a year. You go up to this kind of, it's very, very high, so it's quite breathy, and then you go over past this glacier, and then you go down into this valley where there's this river that just coils through it, and it looks like a white snake. And in the sun, when it's sunny, the smell of it and the look of it and the birds and the cows are just incredible. The cows in Switzerland are my favorite. And I always long to be a vegetarian, because you can lie on the ground in Switzerland and in a field of cows, and little by little they'll all walk up to you. And if you lie there long enough, then one will come and give you a little lick. Really? And then they just all sit there with their little bells looking at you like idiots. And it's such fun.
So sweet.
It's so sweet. Adorable. And when that happens, I always think, oh, please give me the strength to become a vegetarian. But I can't.
Then you can't.
And I go and have a steak.
or veal.
Even worse. Wiener Schnitzel. But I love the cows in Switzerland too. They're much more friendly than English cows, who are likely to stampede you, I notice.
Yes, I don't think they'd be giving you a lick.
I don't know why that is, what it is about. Maybe they're just because they're on the side of a hill, so they can't stampede you in the same way.
I'm not sure. Oh, and you are off to Switzerland. I'm going to send you to the Gstaad Palace.
I know. I'd
So
die
that
for it.
will be wonderful, and it's such a gorgeous place.
I love that place, and it's another hotel that it looks amazing from a distance, because from a distance it looks like a kind of Snow White's palace.
Yeah.
Rather like the
Disney.
Chateau Marmont in Los Angeles, if you look at it from the right area, it really does look like something out of a Disney film. It's when you get close that it kind of changes a bit.
And it's still family owned, and it is still really fabulous.
It's lovely, the Palace in Gstaad.
So
I'd love to
enjoy
go there.
that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rupert. It has been such a joy and delight to meet you, but also to go around the world and hear all of your stories.
Oh, thank you very much indeed for having me.
Thank you.